Sego sewo goego, Yogotsurare Yunjits. Greetings, everyone. My name is Yogotsurare Amanda Lickers. I'm a Seneca of Six Nations of the Grand River. And yeah, the Indigenous Land Restitution Research Christian. and actually, that fellowship is open right now, taking applications for the next iteration. Just putting that out there for the Indigenous folks in the audience tonight. Because, well, these guys are my colleagues as well. And, this film wouldn't have been possible without their words and their contributions and the work that they're doing in community. And some of those practices we engage in together. And it's really an exciting opportunity to talk about this idea of placekeeping from a perspective of really land stewardship and Indigenous sovereignty, which is where I think that term has the most value. And I'm gonna read briefly just the synopsis from the film. And afterwards, I encourage everyone to take some time to really take in the film and the exhibition, to read through the exhibition texts. There is a lot more kind of information around some language. Maybe you don't know what terra nullius means. So some of the answers are in the exhibition, just to sort of, encourage that. So the film Everlasting is an experimental short film, a research creation blending documentary and archival research in the cinema verite format, and it follows the placekeeping power of unbroken ties to territory through local seed saving and hide tanning initiatives. These ways of being and doing refuse settler partitions of land and city and challenge settler geographies of terra nullius. Interlacing past, present, and future across the backdrop of a shape-shifting metropolis, the short film affirms Indigenous peoples' connection to the land beyond the past as everlasting. And that was really important to me because part of this research creation fellow is connected to the work that the CCA is doing through the Living Lands Acknowledgement Working Group. And often land acknowledgements are positioning us as Indigenous peoples in the past in historic and static roles. And so really just emphasizing the grassroots action that's taking place as an unbroken tie to our territory as we continue to work in relationship with our traditional lands and also our internation relations to each other. Yeah, so that's kind of the premise for tonight. I could talk a little bit about some of my land-based practices, maybe after we hear from the rest of our panelists here. And I think I'll pass the mic. Thank you so much.
Sego, my name is Marnie Jacobs. I work at the All Nations Gathering in Ganawage. I also run a program called the Ganawage Community Homestead, where we grow food, we preserve food, we cook over an open fire, we hold workshops and classes on how to do that. And our place is open to other Indigenous communities or Indigenous groups within the city to come have their workshops or gatherings, and they are allowed to cook over an open fire there.
Hi, my name's Godwin. I am Nahia from Montreal Lake Cree Nation, located in Treaty 6 territory in northern Saskatchewan. I'm one of the co-founders of the Buckskin Babes, and we started this journey about 5-6 years ago, and it's a kind of like an urban land-based camp where we tan hides, and what's transpired from that is like not just hide practice, but we've been learning how to cook food like geese and the meat, fish and things like that. And we bring our elders in from northern communities. Initially, it started with my aunt from Lac La Ronge, Saskatchewan. But because she's so far, we also work with Gracie Rat, who's from Kitigan Zibi. There's been a For us, for me, when we first started the Buckskin Babes, it was really about connection and access to practices, and bringing the bush to the city was really important for us so that we could, many of us have been displaced from our communities, so part of our process has been really connecting with each other, but also honoring the elders. And we, a lot of people have said that this is revitalizing. It's not for me, or it's more about reawakening the practices of tanning, because a lot of the community members that live in the north have been doing these practices and they haven't been sleeping. They're very much awake. So, yeah, that's.
Seguzo gwego ka ditira kosijat suganasio ni wagitaroda tano kahnawagini dewagano asani wasa zada na dewagosiriago. I extend my greetings. My Ganigaha name is She Gathers the Flowers. My name is Brooke. I'm Snipe Clan from Ganawage, and I had to think about it, but I've seen 37 winters this season. The founder of Tganyos, which is a grassroots initiative that was birthed to reconnect back to ourselves, to each other, and to the land by really slowing down and honoring the cycles, the seasons. We do a lot of land-based learning in the community, and the mission is to really connect back to our foodways, our original foods. We have a lot of ancestral heirloom Haudenosaunee varieties of beans, squash, corn, tobacco. So we're really trying to build up our seed library. We don't want to say bank because it's alive, it's living, they're being planted. So we're rematriating the land with our seeds, and each seed is like a prayer. We sing to our seeds, we have ceremony with our seeds. We have ceremony for our foods when we open the garden, close the garden. Also fortunate enough to be involved with the Buckskin Babes. It's been very healing journey. We're realizing all this work, utilizing our hands and reigniting all of our senses is really, really healing for our people. And yeah, we also do a lot of workshops, hands-on learning, intergenerational knowledge transmission. We bring in elders, local knowledge keepers. We just create really safe space to connect back to culture. Like Autumn said, it's not revitalizing, we're really remembering, breathing new life into old ways and keeping those traditions alive for future generations. Yeah.
That was so good. That was amazing. Wow, guys, you can tell that also too, making the film, I'm like, yeah, getting the talking points down and the practice of talking about your work and how that evolves over time. And anyways, congratulations. Great job, guys. You did such a good job. So proud of you. Yeah. Awesome. So I asked folks if they were able to maybe bring a tool or an item to help as a storytelling device. So I'm gonna start it off by just sharing about this tool that I have here today. Because I've been thinking about, as an interdisciplinary artist, the responsibility of storytelling and community practices, and how these practices wouldn't be also possible without, I think, as Autumn, you said, that sisterhood that we've built together, working in these shared values of remembering is so exciting. And just like many practices, it takes years to really learn, and I'm still learning, so it's really exciting. This particular tool wouldn't have been possible for me to make if it wasn't for collaborating as a community early on and being part of these spaces that are really seeking to reassert our position in our own territories, and especially in urban settings where we're dealing with hyper-invisibilization, And that was something that was very interesting to me in the residency, in the fellowship as well. And actually, some of my response to the environment at the Canadian Centre of Architecture was, for example, on opening night, to put a red cloth over the Shaughnessy bust, and this sort of ever-present colonial legacy that we are grappling with in this house, and in this city and in this province. And so for those who don't know, he's basically like a rail baron. He was really involved in the Canadian Pacific Railway, and a lot of the Shaughnessy Village historical ties are to the railway industry, which was very much a colonizing effort to also nation build this settler state of Canada, which was done through violent means, and it requires all manners of resistance. And part of that resistance is taking our opportunities in the concrete jungle and re-indigenizing them. And that was really exciting in the work with Buckskin Babes. And so anyways, so we started doing our community hide camps, and I was able to apply to a residency in Banff, Alberta, where I got the opportunity to work with the Buffalo People Arts Institute, and working on a hide tanning and parfleche residency, and we were also working on making bone tools. Part of the philosophy behind learning these practices is having, in a Western worldview, we call it sustainability. In Indigenous worldviews, it's just part of our practices, but to actually utilize every part of an animal when we harvest them. And there is actually ways to apply them, every part of the animal, if you learn how to do it, right? And so, anyways, I thought that was so powerful that even the tools to process the animal could be found in the animal itself. And there was also a really an excellent lesson behind this that Lauren Big Eagle shared with me. Him and Jolie Big Eagle, they're actually they're partners, and they are the heads of the Buffalo People Arts Institute, and they focus on buffalo hide tanning in Regina, and they're an Indigenous artist-run center. They're so cool. And they talk about how, this hide tanning practice, buffalo builds kinship. And Lauren shared, this is actually a moose, this is from a moose, but he shared these bones that he had been curing with us, so that way we could, get into the wood shop, cut them open, and turn them into tools, refine them, and it took literally years for these bones to sun bleach in order to be prepared, and ultimately, they're kind of mummified, and the natural oils of the marrow actually permeate the bone. They fill, because bones are naturally porous, so they fill it with a fat, and it helps to create a water-resistant layer. And even just this process of utilizing the bones requires this multi-year stage of leaving them out in the sun to basically cure and to sunbake. And that, it took him years to do this, and he was passing these on to us as learners so that we could have the opportunity to make our first bone tools. So I thought that was so interesting, because sometimes in today's culture, we want to learn, which is good, but sometimes there's such a focus on instant gratification and having a quick experience where you can become an expert in 2 weeks. And I find there's something very reciprocal in a practice that requires you to take years to learn it. And then also too, this little handle, there was another instructor there named Gary, and he was really, really cool. He experimented with soy lecithin and oatmeal, and it actually ended up eating through his hide because he was experimenting and it was too much lecithin. But anyways, he was just showing us different knotting techniques and just really mentoring. And in the art world, in the Western art world, there's a lot of gatekeeping over skills and knowledge in order to professionalize and turn, culture into something that's being highly commercialized. And I thought that practice of sharing and openly mentoring also showed such a difference in Indigenous community approaches to art, you know, that it's also part of our living cultures, and it's a way of also building community. So that was really awesome. So I just wanted to share that part from my practice, and yeah, that's my storying. Cool. Get some water. And yeah, if you want to maybe share a little bit about how you got into food preservation, or some of the work you guys are doing with planting in the greenhouses, and even the free food program. Like, what kind of called you to this work, and when did you find the motivation to, you know, go out there and take this kind of action?
I started preserving food over 20 years ago. My oldest child at the time was a baby, and he loved applesauce. And I was like, I could do that. So instead of making batch after batch, I just read up on how to preserve it. So he would have his supply of applesauce. And it just morphed out of that. It was just a passion where I could go and plant carrots in my garden, and come harvest season, pull them out and preserve them, or make my raspberry jam for my French toast, but make sure I have a year-long supply for my household. And it's just that feel-good feeling, knowing that I can do all this to keep my family healthy and happy with food. And then it kind of morphed where I would post it on Facebook, like, oh, I just canned, you know, tomatoes, and people are like, show me. And I was like, I'll go to your house and I'll show you how to do it. I do not have a problem with that, because I feel within today's world, the price of produce and food in general is just insane. And if you could grow it yourself from seed, that I trade it with my friend down the road, and then, you know, you grow it from seed, you love your plant, you sing to it, and then when it comes time to harvest, that's nourishment for your family. It's just such a good feeling knowing that I could do that, and I could also share with people in my community on how to do that. I like to call it from dirt to fork, because it's just the way it works. Like, it's just, I love doing it. It's a good feeling. So I started working at the All Nations Gathering Place in January this year. They had reached out to me because they heard me talk about food security and sovereignty in the community of Ganawage, where I live, because I find it's a concern, it's an issue. We're far behind than other communities on that. Like, there's no greenhouses, there's nothing. People have their own gardens in their yards, but my vision is to have for the community. It's not for myself, it's for everybody else. So I was just talking with somebody at my job. I was like, oh my God, you work with bees. I want to get some beehives here. And she's like, yeah, no problem, get bees. I'll come in and I'll show you what to do and this and that. And I was like, yeah, I would like to get some greenhouses too, you know, like for the community greenhouses. Well, she came back 2 days later and she says, I got you greenhouses and beehives. So we've been busy building those. They're almost near completion. And I would like to have them go 365 days a year to give produce out to my community. Because there is also another program there called the Free Food for Everyone. And twice a week they receive food deliveries, and it's handed out to the community. We also cook meals. We've been putting out 2 meals now every week for people to come pick up. It's just, I don't know, it's a lovely spot where I work.
I think that's really beautiful too, because of how important like food is as a cultural point in our communities, and as well as like really embodying that nourishment, which I'm sure other people here could talk about too. I'm looking forward to, but
It's not just food either. I grew some medicine this year because an organization that works with Indigenous people in Montreal had asked me if I could grow them tobacco because they can't do it here because it's deemed illegal by the government. And I was like, I could fill a whole greenhouse with it and nobody's gonna say a thing to me. So that's another aspect of it, is helping other Indigenous people to be who they are and for them to have that connection to who they are, to who we are as a people. It's a really good feeling.
great, yes. Amazing, huh? Niala, thank you so much, Marnie. I really appreciate you coming out tonight and sharing. It's so nice to hear, from people in person. For folks who are staff at the CCA, have probably been hearing like the film over and over and getting to like take that in, but getting an opportunity to hear us in person is probably so exciting for them as well. So thank you guys so much. Autumn, you're up next. I see you got a beautiful fur on your lap and a very interesting wooden device in your hand. Yeah, would you like me to set up the mic stand for you to speak?
I'm not that good.
You got,
thank you.
Yeah, that's family right there.
So I brought a high tanning tool. It's a scraper. And I also brought a fox that was, I come from a family of trappers. And this is from our trap line. I don't know how old it is. It was just gifted to me from one of my family members before he passed away. So I kept it. It'll be forever with me. But it just kind of, high tanning for me started really when I began university. I was really struggling with identity in the sense of reading my history and reading who I was through academic books. And I felt that it was actually quite violent in the aspect of, here's my stories, here's our stories being told, but not being told from our people. And and I didn't start university until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. I have 2 beautiful children. They were very young. And when I started, it was already very difficult because I came from a very kind of the residue of residential schools. My mom, my family members all attended residential schools, and my cookum went missing and murdered in 1970. So I understood what was happening or what I was reading, but I was just still feeling heavily disconnected. Who am I? What am I doing here? Why am I even in school? There was all these questions that I had, and I couldn't get into it. And I remember I was going to quit, and my supervisor, who is awesome, she came to me and she said, you need to go back home. You need to connect to your community, connect with your aunties, connect with your family, and start the healing process. So she turned that into kind of like a project through her SHIRT grant, and that's what I ended up doing. I went home and I worked with my aunt, who's a recognized elder in her community. She's been living off the land. When she came off a residential school, she made it her job to speak her language, to work with youth, and also to learn the medicines of the land. So to learn all of the local medicines or plants and how to make recipes to heal people. So when I asked her if I could come out and do research, it was, a bit kind of like iffy because I'm bringing Western academia into the bush, basically, and had to really kind of align myself with how that would look like. But when I went home, and it's not like I was disconnected completely from community. I would go home every couple of years, but being in Saskatchewan and in Montreal, there was still and having 2 kids and single, I couldn't afford to go home all the time. So it was, I felt like homesick, but at the same time, I never really actually went home to learn land-based practices. I would just go home to visit family and kind of do that. So this was kind of a different experience of going home and having I want to learn how to net fish. I want to learn how to tan hides. I want to, all within a span of a month. I wanted to do it all. But so we really focused just on medicines, hides, and fishing. And it turned out to be an amazing experience. My kids, it was the process for my kids. We went to the trap line, which has been in our family for generations and generations. And when we got out there, there's no technology whatsoever. We don't have access to the internet. I didn't bring my laptop even. So the kids really learned fast how to live off the land and actually how to communicate with each other again. I feel like they're always on their phones, they're on the computer, they're talking, they're not talking to each other. And they were actually doing a lot of problem solving. And the first thing that my son did when he was out there was start carving and started to play on the rocks. And it just it was just an amazing experience. So when I came back home, back into the city, it was that crazy life of that fast pace like you're talking about. It's this go, 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 universities, assignments, tests, everything. And I just, again, felt disconnected. And I think the rebel in me was just we need to bring the bush. We need to start tanning hides. And Brooke and I actually went to school together, and that's where we the idea generated of we need to get some hides, and we need to, you had a hide, but I ended up doing a call out to a community in Waskaganish, and we got a hide from some Cree hunters out there. And that was kind of where the process started. But we had no tools. We didn't know what we were doing. And then COVID started, and then we were oh my gosh, the people that were supposed to come and help us couldn't end up coming. So we did everything over, Zoom. And the first thing that we did, the first person that I reached out to was a guy named Brian Bird, who is a hide tanner out west, and he makes these amazing tools. So we ended up ordering 4 or 5 of them, and we got the hide, and we just kind of did everything ad hoc, and started just we would call my aunt and be hey, what do we do now? How do we do this? So it was just a really learning practice amongst each other. We kind of figured it out, but yeah, the first couple times was rough. Lost a couple of hides in the practice, but losing hides, there is definitely a sentimental feeling towards it but we also take so much, because there's so much work that goes into the practice of the hide that when you lose it, or if you make a mistake, or if it ends up going bad, there's a piece of your heart that goes with that hide, that leaves with that hide. So, and it's also because it was such a community hide that I think we all kind of felt the loss of it. Anyways, I can keep going, but Amanda told me that I talk too much, so I got to stop.
Are we talking about our tools? Okay, my tool's coming up. I was what do I have on me? He's not my tool, but sometimes at the garden. Okay, so, yeah, corn. Corn has been such a beautiful teacher, an ancestor, medicine, and it's not just sustenance. Corn isn't just food, it's very ceremonial. This corn has come from many, many hands, grandmothers, Sky Woman, our creation story, and it just, yeah, it's so like each little kernel has so much genetic knowledge and remembrance that when we plant these seeds, when we cook these foods, it's feeding our spirit. It's feeding our, not just our bodies, but our spirit. And it unlocks this ancestral memory. And I feel like the corn journey started when I started learning Kanyat Gaha. There was a Mohawk immersion program in our community where it's 2 years full-time. So we're just learning our language. And a part of the curriculum is going back to ceremony. And younger days, I had no idea what they were saying, like because of language loss. So I just felt like I was going through the motions, singing, dancing, but like no idea what they were saying. So fast forward to 2016, being in this program and having to go back to ceremony as a part of curriculum, it really awoken. It just, like my little ember of fire inside of me was like fanned and it lit up, and this little ember was like burning bright because now I understood what they were saying. And in our language, it's so poetic. Like you couldn't even translate, like you just lose the meaning of what they're really saying. And it carries stories and knowledge, teachings, and it's just so beautiful. It was emotional going back and knowing what they were saying and how much responsibility we have to the land. It's not just take, but we have to give back to our Mother Earth. And by putting these seeds back into the earth, we're continuing our responsibility to our foodways, to our ancestors, to the land, the babies, and then all of creation. It's not just people and seeds. There's the wind, the thunder beings. Before we plant, we do this whole tobacco burning, and we acknowledge all of creation. We acknowledge the birds, the animals, the thunder beings, the rain, the stars, the dew that will come in the morning and help nourish these seeds. So it's a very vast like weaving that happens, and it connects the past, the present, the future, all instantaneously, this like Indigenous continuum. So yeah, corn pretty much ignited all of that, and going into hide work, just really respecting the spirit of the animal so that spirit continues and lives on we wear our moccasins. There's a piece of hide in this earring. There's porcupine quills. So like animals live on through our practices. We make art. We wear them in ceremony. Our tobacco pouches. This, I think there's some leather in the back of this belt. This is my grade 6 graduation. It still fits. So yeah, this work has been very like mind-blowing. They say, 5 senses, but it ignites my 6, 7 sense. Like there's more of an intuition. When we're eating seasonally off the land, like it just, it deepens your knowing, your intuition. So ingesting medicines that only come out for a 2-week window, or picking berries that come out for a 2-week window, like it's Mother Nature telling you, like you need to ingest this. So if people forage mushrooms, or if anyone here fishes, I'm sure we all love maple syrup. Does anyone tap maple trees? Or fish? Plant gardens? Yeah? Herb boxes? So yeah, the love and care that goes into planting, being in the dirt, being on the land. So this work has really evolved into honoring Haudenosaunee epistemologies, our creation stories. We follow the 13 lunar cycle, which is on the turtle's back. So we're re-indigenizing how we look at time and connect to the calendar, and really trying to slow down and get out of the mundane Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Like we're seeing it challenge people, like, oh, I need a 2-week notice, or I need when's this event? I need to know so I can take work off. And it's like, no, we got to pick the berries because they're ready, or we got to tap the trees because the maple's flowing. So it's like unconditioning our minds that have been colonized to re-indigenize and connect back to our rhythms, our cycles. And it's been the most amazing journey. So we bring youth out to tap trees, and we're learning the language of the land as we go. So like when we see moths or certain bugs, or when we hear the frogs, we're like, oh, okay, it's time to pull the buckets. Like there's all these natural phenomenon and indicators when you start spending time on the land and watching things, how they grow. So yeah, we do maple tapping, we bring kids spear fishing, and everything's like cradle to grave. If we catch walleye, we're keeping some skins to do fish skin leather, which Amanda is big on. What else? Trying to keep the bones to make art and with their vertebrae. Same thing with the moose. We went harvest a moose. We did a collective hunt. We brought some young guys out, some seasoned hunters and some eager learners, and we caught a moose. And we brought that moose back. We did a moose hide camp within the next 2 days, and Amanda was there to help out. It was 4 days long, and it was really, really fun. The kids came in from the elementary, from high school. So it's really communal, it's heart work, it's trauma-informed, it's very healing, medicinal, grounding. And yeah, the cycle just goes and continues. We just finished a corn twining class, so with the husk, we're not just throwing away a husk, we're saving all of this husk. And then we did a 3-day workshop where we twined it and made a beautiful little vase. You can make a nice hat, we can make moccasins, so nothing goes to waste. It's very ecological, and there's a lot of science. Like, we need to save our hardwood ash just to cook this corn. It's called namixilization. So there's a lot that go into it, a lot of math, a lot of science. Like, we were the original astronomers, the original mathematicians, and Western academia is just catching up to the things that we know. Yeah. Second class. No.
It's so amazing just to have the privilege of working closely together and getting to hear your guys' story evolve and the things that you're sharing. It's so important. I think it's an incredible example, particularly to Caños, what you guys are doing, and how, for us, this connection with art is a connection, and then you brought this up too in the film, Autumn, it's our worldviews, it's our relationships, it's our governance, it's science, it's technology, it's ecological sustainability, these ideas of permaculture, these are indigenous technologies, the idea that, the amount of the food forests that exist on our territories before colonization that were over-harvested and cut down and turned into some of, really into part of the Navy for the English Army, and for colonization, like broadly, the resources of the so-called New World. And even this idea of resources, we're taking something that's a familial relationship and turning it into an object, taking it away from being something that's living and animate into something that's dead. And then it's a hierarchical relationship where humans are greater than nature. These are the things that we're combating it all the time. And it's interconnected. Our worldviews, our governance, our art, our science, our technology, and it's a reciprocal relationship with the territories. This is something that was stewarded, right? It's not just an accident that we had these cultivated food forests. This is something our ancestors, that was their urban planning, so that's some of the issues, kind of themes that the film tries to address in the work in Everlasting and really confronting these colonial legacies and how we relate to the urban environment, and that it still is unceded territory and that we're gonna occupy it and to continue our practices. It's something that even our language is very noun-based, actions, practices, relations, these are things that are maintained. So thank you guys again so much for coming out and sharing. A few little notes I want to kind of just give a little update. So from the days of having to zoom in our elders for Buckskin Babes when they, if you lived in Quebec during the pandemic, you probably remember when they shut down the Ontario-Quebec border. So that was like when we were planning like our first hide camp. It was a hectic time. And, but now all the way to, you know, and we've been working at this place called Bâtiment 7, which maybe you might know about. I'm not going to go into so much detail, the background story of those guys, Google it. And so we were working there because it's kind of like, you can say it's an art ecosystem over at B7, and it's a lot of kind of anarchist, DIY, like sort of artists, almost like an artist-run center, but more anarchistic, you could say. And so they had some vacant lots, and that's what we were utilizing. We were implementing our hide camps there, and it is formerly the Canadian National, speaking of the railway, another railway connection, kind of interesting. Yeah. You know, so it was a CN rail yard down in Point St. Charles, and so they had to actually bioremediate the soil because they weren't going to tear it down to build condos. The anarchists had won. And so through that process, we were basically able to swindle the city of Montreal into giving us a little outdoor cultural hub there. So it'll be a permanent municipal park that'll have infrastructure for us to do hide tanning. So that's really exciting, and that'll be opening up this spring, summer time. It's currently under construction. And it's a really interesting moment where, you know, it was very responsive to our needs as hide tanners. And to be able to implement that with a co-design was really cool. So just little updates, if you find it interesting. I'm definitely curious to hear from the audience if there's anyone with...
Yeah, I don't mind. I might have missed it, but what is this tool for?
Oh, great question. Excellent. Yeah, I maybe didn't get that far in actually explaining it. So this is the same kind of tool of what Autumn has. So these are utilized for the same purpose. Sorry, Marnie, right over your face. So when we have an animal hide, like a moose or a deer, we string it up or we put it over a post, and we expose the side that has all of the flesh and the muscles, and we use this to take it off. Yeah. And so this is the OG model, and this is the updated. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, thank you for sharing your stories. When you were introducing yourselves, you sort of expressed that certain words like revitalization, you didn't feel comfortable with it, or that's what I was feeling. And I was curious if you could expand a little bit on that and kind of explain share with us which words, have more meaning for you.
So I don't think that revitalizing is a bad word. I think there are certain things that we're revitalizing, but for hide work and for cultural practice such as land-based, there's people in communities that have been doing fur work their whole lives, who have been working, living off the land basically, and who still have their language predominantly as Cree, or predominantly they haven't been displaced, or they haven't been, so revitalizing a practice that's been, it's not like it's a I think I wrote about this in my master's, about the idea that these practices aren't new. They have been going on for forever. So it's, for us, yeah, it's a resurgence. Yeah, there's a resurgence in the work that we're doing. It's bringing it alive. It's reawakening it within people that have been displaced from community, like myself. So it's because of the fact that I couldn't stay, I lived in community majority of my life, in my adolescence. And then when I had to leave because of economic reasons and or just family trauma, I it's not revitalizing for me because my family's been doing it for so long. So, and I think that it also kind of speaks to the fact that like when we're saying revitalizing to like the elders in community, like back home, it's almost insulting to them because it's like, well, no, we've been doing this. You guys just haven't been paying attention. So it's kind of, you know. So yeah, that's kind of what I was meaning by that.
I think I was saying you're remembering instead of the revitalizing, because maybe it just was sleeping for a minute, and now they say we all come here with gifts. So maybe that person's going to come with the gift and the knowing of tanning, or the gift and knowing of seeds. So it's just remembering their gifts.
One last thing I'll add on to that before we'll take another question as well is and I feel like I've heard you guys talk about this a lot as well, and like Autumn as well, and that, like, for example, you know, like who we are learning from are residential school survivors who kept this knowledge going even at times where it was illegal, or they would be punished. So I think it's really important that we recognize those legacies of knowledge stewardship that took place by our elders, by our aunties, parents, and grandparents who survived the residential school system and kept these practices going. And I remember Gracie talking too. She has a nickname called the Roadkill Queen. She's very infamous. And, you know, she was like, people kind of like made fun of me at first when she started doing, like, really normalizing and bringing out this practice. And sometimes hide work, it could be, you know, fun and cool, but, you know, it can be smelly. It can be, there's a lot of hard work. And there's a lot of science as well that goes into the practice. So there is a lot of struggle that goes along with it. And there was a time where it wasn't like cool and fun, like where we're revitalizing. So I think there's also a lot of privilege sometimes in being able to reconnect and access something. Yeah, so I think that's where kind of some of that nuance comes from.
Alternative practices. So that was like in the same kind of like terminology as revitalizing. It kind of displaces, like it displaces us from the actual reawakening. Is kind of, you know, like similar to what you're saying. It's like this feeling of they're not alternative in community. They're this is what we do every day. It's part of our lifestyle. So it's like, I find it like, yeah.
Thank you for presenting the land-based practice of Indigenous, people in Montreal. And I understand that many practices were illegal, or if not illegal, discouraged, or ceremonies were illegal. And so this is unbelievable. Like growing up in Canada and being born here, like no one understands how someone could say that someone's dance was illegal. Someone's language was illegal. This is absolutely shocking. And so I'm interested in the presentation and the importance of bringing, say, land-based practices that were traditional, that have existed for very long periods of time, to cities. And what is like you're creating this in a city. So how does that happen? Maybe not from Ganawake as much, but here you're creating a center in the city where animal and plant food and garment creation, or tool creation, and other aspects of Indigenous life are being sort of are creating like an energy. So could you address that a little bit more? There's an extraordinary contrast in that.
Well, I guess, okay. Well, I guess I'll say this, like it's all unceded land, right? So for me, like as an Indigenous person, when I'm coming into the city, I'm seeing a space where maybe how I see the city of Montreal is very different than how non-Indigenous people see the city. And I try to show a bit of that perspective in the film. But I would really say that, like, in this idea of refusing settler partitions of land and city, this settler colonial idea that a city doesn't have nature, that a city isn't sovereign, that a city isn't sacred. And You know, there was recently a play on the Stone and Bone Spectacular, and they talked about Haudenosaunee and Indigenous burial sites that have been found across the island, including in the urban setting of Montreal. And so for me, it's just really kind of like returning practices that have already been taking place here to a setting where they do belong.
Well, I think that's, but I also feel that what choice do we have? Like, it's not like I can go back and live in the bush. Like, I live in Montreal, I live in Chichage. I know that I'm a guest on these lands, but I also know that I want to practice the things that my family does back home. So it's not it's not something that's like, it's not something that I'm trying to get that's performative. It's something that I just want to do. And creating space and access for that has been rewarding. And it's been very, like, there's tons of people that have similar stories to mine that actually also want to have access. So that's the need. It's who we are.
It's who we are, and it's a good feeling getting back to the basics and knowing that this knowledge that we're learning and that we're passing on has been passed on for generations, and it's thriving and it's surviving, just like us.
Yeah, so
That was a perfect note to end on. Yeah.
thank you so much. And I think we can really thank them.